G'day guys, how are we? Welcome to the weekly roundup. This is where we give you just a quick rundown of all the boxing news from around Australia and the world ahead of the weekend. And this week here in Australia, it's all been about one fighter, and that's Tim Tszyu. Last week, of course, it was announced he would fight Brian Mendoza on October 15th at the Gold Coast Convention Centre. Well, it's been officially announced, the two heading or going head-to-head in Las Vegas to officially announce the entire card, not just that fight. So that'll be for the WBO Super Welterweight title, so a massive event for Australian boxing fans here, whether it be on the Gold Coast or anywhere around Australia. I'm sure they'll get a massive crowd for it. Interesting that Gold Coast got denied. Melbourne and Sydney were in the mix, but it all comes down to money. So I hope everyone gets paid really well from out of that, being the fighters and, of course, the promoters. So on that card also has been announced that Sam Goodman, 15-0, will fight Miguel Flores, 25-4-1, over 12 rounds. Now, if you don't know much about Miguel Flores, as I said, 25-4-1. One of those losses was a 12-round decision loss to Leo Santa Cruz back in 2019 for the WBA Super Featherweight title. In his last fight in September last year, he drew with one of the modern-day greats in Abner Mares. So no soft opponent for Sam Goodman. He's looking to challenge later in the year, or probably early next year, I should say now, for the World Featherweight title, maybe against Naoya Inoue. But we'll see what happens there. So a good test for Sam Goodman, and let's hope he gets through that one. Also on the undercard, Sergey Vorobyev, 19-1, will make his Australian debut against veteran Wade Ryan, 21-11. Now that's over 10 rounds in the middleweight division. Wade Ryan, a very cagey and capable, we'll say probably a journeyman type of fighter here in Australia, but it should be a tough test for the Russian, who's only fought outside of Russia just once. So as I said, 19-1. Let's see what he shows against Wade Ryan. A fight to really look forward to on that card as well, I think, is Nathaniel May. Now, he's up against Jackson John England. This has Fight of the Night written all over it. Nathaniel May, we haven't seen a lot of him in the last few years, but a great talent. He's 22-3. Jackson John England just 14-2. So that should be a ripper of a fight. 10 rounds in the, I think it's a super featherweight division. And to round out that card, Hassan Hamdan, 6-0. The Jeff Fennick protege will fight Danvers Kachiri, 3-1 over 8 rounds at welterweight. And Chanel Dargan, always a crowd pleaser. She's 2-1-2. Will fight another very talented young fighter in Amber Amelia, who's 3-1 over 6 rounds at featherweight. And also on that card, Toisi Vusuatu, I think I've pronounced that right, will fight at 8 rounds in the heavyweight division. His opponent yet to be announced. So a big card there. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketek. So make sure you jump on there. Tickets won't last long for the Tim Tszyu, Brian Mendoza fight. I don't think it's actually been officially announced whether the WBC interim title will also be on the line. Of course, Brian Mendoza has that belt, but it would definitely be for Tim Tszyu's WBO Super Welterweight title, which by that stage, being after the Canelo and Charlo fight, will be officially the full championship. So, it should be another massive event for Tim Tszyu before he probably most likely goes overseas to the States and fights the majority of the rest of his career over there, just like his dad did. On to some other results from last weekend. Seems an eternity ago. Last Saturday night at Eaton's Hill in Brisbane, unfortunately, Floyd Masson lost his IBO World Cruiserweight title by 6-round stoppage to Yves Nagapu. Floyd Masson drops to 13-1. The Belgian fighter Nagabu improves to 22-2. Who knows, maybe we might get a fight with him and Jai Opetaia next year sometime. It is the IBO belt. No doubt Jai Opetaia wants to clean up the division, and that would probably rate very well here in Australia. So, unfortunately for Floyd, Masson lost the belt, but I'm sure he'll be back. He's only had 14 fights, so plenty of good fights left in him. On the undercard, Luke Modini, a very good young prospect, 10-0. Or improved to 10-0 with a second-round knockout of Benjamin Kelleher. He drops to 16-6-2. Lewis Chadwick improved to 4-1 with a 6-round decision over veteran Adrian Rodriguez, who drops to 13-7-2. The scores there, 60-52 times 2 and 59.53 on the third card. Taylor Robinson improved to 9-1, a really good young prospect in the super flyweight division. In the female ranks, she had an eight round win over Harmer Yesti, who drops to 1-2-1. The scores there, 79-73 times 2, and a little bit surprising, 77-75 from the third judge, who I thought just might have been watching a different fight than the rest of us, but it's his call. He can call it the way he sees it. And in the other fight on that card, that was promoted by Ace Boxing, another quality card, Bryce Hegarty improved to 4-0 with a second round knockout of Clinton Elliott, who lost his pro debut. That was a 4-rounder in the super middleweight division. And during the week, on Wednesday, September 13th, in Moore Park in Sydney, Dylan Biggs has set up a potential fight with Nikita Tszyu with a first round KO of a pretty overly matched Ryan Mitchum. Dylan Biggs 10-0. Ryan Mitchum dropped to 3-7. It was only a 6-rounder. No Limit got exactly what they wanted. They wanted to showcase this potential opponent of Nikita Tszyu. Dylan Biggs did not disappoint. Really impressive young guy. I think he's only 21, so that should be a really, really, really big potential fight that could take place in December. On the undercard of that event, Jackson Murray got dropped against Louis Masters, had his moments, did Masters, but eventually won a 6-round decision, 58-55 times 2. And Masters 57-56. So a good test for Jackson Murray. I know he's been calling out some of the big dogs in the division. I personally think he's got a long way to go before he challenges those guys. However, you can only win, and now being 4-0, actually it might be 5-0 now, I'm sorry. Will of course, eventually go into bigger fights, but for now, I think he's got to get some more rounds under his belt. Also on the undercard, a very, very surprising result. Young prospect Vegas Larfield dropped to 9-1 with an 8-round points loss against Albert Nolan, who hasn't really been seen a lot in the past few years. Nolan improved to 7-0-1. As I said, an 8-round decision win, 77-75 times 2 and 78-74 on the other card. I, for one, thought maybe Larfield might have got the decision. However, it was close, and I wouldn't have argued either way. But a really, really surprising result from, you could almost call him the house fighter in Larfield. Only a very, very young kid, so he's got plenty of time to regroup. Very good team behind him. I've got no doubt that fight will be run back later in the year or early next year. But Albert Nolan with the upset there in Sydney. The other fights on the card, which was an awesome night of fights, I will say. Joel Pavlidis with a 6-round decision win over Cody Beacon. 59-55 times 2 and 58-55 on the other card. Pavlidis improves to 3-2-1. Cody Beacon drops to 6-1. And on in the other fight on that card, Brandon Grush with an upset 4-round decision over former Olympian Johan Lind. So Grush was making his pro debut. He won by scores of 39-37 times 2. And the other card was a 38-38 draw. So a really, really good card by No Limit. I must admit, I had my doubts about the quality of the card, and probably bar the main event, which I suppose is what you've got to judge the card on. I suppose if you break it all down, the rest of the card was great. The first 3 fights, especially, all fight of the year candidates, and doing great things. No Limit. On to some bigger news too, to go along with the Tim Tszyu announcement. George Kambosos, there is word or rumours that he will take on Vasily Lomachenko in January or February in Australia for the IBF lightweight title. That's a vacant belt that looks potentially will be given up by Devin Haney. Haney, of course, will fight Regis Prograis later in the year. Now, if he doesn't decide to come back to lightweight regarding that result, then that will be, as I said, for the IBF lightweight belt. Massive event here in Australia, whether it's in Melbourne or Sydney or maybe on the Gold Coast, which seems to be putting their hand up for some of these big events. So a massive fight there. The way this has come about, Kambosos is actually 2, Lomachenko 3 in the ratings. Gustavo Lemos is actually, or was, the number 1 contender. He's had some weight issues recently. He has been demoted from the rankings entirely. So the number 1 ranking is vacant at the moment. If you can have a rating vacant, I've never seen that sort of done a lot, where a rating is vacant. Seen plenty of titles, but not ratings. So that really opens the door now for Kambosos Lomachenko, and what a massive fight that would be for Australian boxing on top of everything going on at the moment. Just add it to the list of Jai Pataya, Jason Maloney, and of course Tim Tszyu. So plenty going on there. Just finally on the Australian news this weekend in Tijuana, Mexico, Sky Nicholson 7-0 will fight Sabrina Perez 18-1-1 for the WBC interim featherweight title. So all the best to Sky Nicholson in Mexico this weekend. Onto the world scene, the Crawford-Spence rematch, as I reported last week, looks to have been agreed to. However, there are some complications. Now, I won't bore you with all the details because we'll be here all day. But the word is that as per the contracts in the first fight, Crawford decides the weight. Now, he has said he will, or he's willing to fight Errol Spence at 154. However, he would ask for more percentage as far as the purses go. So this probably goes against a little bit of what was initially agreed. But at the end of the day, Crawford holds all the aces in the pack. And the rumours are that he, by giving Spence that fight at 154, will ask for a bigger percentage as far as the purses go. I think it's not too much to ask. If you ask me, Crawford could easily move up and have some big fights, whether it be Tim Tszyu, Charlo, Canelo, you name it. Plenty of big fights for Crawford. He doesn't necessarily need the Spence rematch. So I, for one, think it's not too much to ask if they tweak the percentages a little bit and he gets a little bit more than what was maybe initially agreed in return by giving that fight to Spence at 154. But as always, plenty to play out in these big fight negotiations. I'm sure we'll get it across the line. But at the moment, it's a little bit of a roadblock there. So, as I said, I'm sure they'll work it out, and we will have Terence Crawford, Errol Spence 2 later in the year, this year or early in 2024. Speaking of some complications, the Anthony Joshua Deontay Wilder fight is looking shaky as well. It was spoken about that it could be in December. That's obviously probably not going to happen now. It's only 3 months away. They would need plenty of time to build that up and get all the particulars worked out. There was also word that the Saudis for this could be going cold, which is the reason it has been delayed. Rival promoter Frank Warren says there's no way that fight happens at all. He would rather see Anthony Joshua fight his man, Daniel Dubois. He's probably a bit of a hot item at the moment, I suppose you could say, coming off the back of the Usyk fight. But Eddie Hearn has come out and said that the Joshua Wilder fight, if the Saudis do continue to play games with getting this fight done, who seem to be more focused on getting Tyson Fury fights against MMA fighters, he will then switch the Joshua Wilder fight to March or April in either Las Vegas or in Wembley in London. So we'll see what happens there. Again, too big a fight not to happen. I don't think either one of those guys will fight Fury in the interim or in the short term. So great fight to put together. And I think March or April in Vegas or Wembley makes a lot more sense than maybe early next year in Saudi at this stage. So another fight that's been made this week after a few complications is the Shakur Stevenson WBC interim lightweight title fight. He was, of course, supposed to fight Frank Martin. Frank Martin has withdrawn because of a rumoured potential fight with Gervonta Davis. So that probably makes sense to pull out of that. I must admit I was scratching my head why Frank Martin would pull out of a fight with Shakur Stevenson. The Gervonta Davis fight would make a lot more sense because there's a lot more money at stake for Frank Martin. Shakur Stevenson has taken no time to move on. He's now scheduled to fight Edwin De Los Santos in November or on November 16 in Las Vegas. That fight will be shown on ESPN on the Grand Prix weekend in Vegas. So it's going to be a massive weekend of sport. Really, really good planning from the promoters. Top rank for Shakur Stevenson and Edwin De Los Santos because it'll just be pandemonium in Las Vegas that weekend with the Grand Prix. So why not make the most of it with a big fight night in Vegas? I spoke about Devin Haney a little earlier. His fight with Regis Prograis has been officially locked in for December 9th in San Francisco. Now, that show will be on DAZN. Of course, Devin Haney's now has committed or fulfilled his commitment with with Top Rank. He had a 3-fight contract with those guys at Top Rank. Now he is a free agent. And he'll hook up again with Matchroom and Eddie Hearn and fight Regis Prograis for the WBC super lightweight belt. as I said, December 9th in San Francisco. So big fight for that one. A lot of implications for a lot of different fighters and belts and divisions and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, should be a really, really good fight. Another fight that's been bubbling in the background as well that looks like it might be getting closer is the Naoya Inoue and Marlon Tapales unification fight. It's been in the works for the last few weeks. That will be for the undisputed featherweight title. Inoue has the WBC, WBO belts. Tapales has the WBA and IBF belts. And Inoue took those belts. He won his two against Steve Fulton in July in Tokyo. Tapales won his in April in Texas. The rumours are December in Tokyo, Japan. So what a massive fight that will be for Inoue to unify yet another division. He's 25-0. Tapales 37-3. Will not be an easy fight for Inoue. I think Marlon Tapales gives him a very, very, very tough fight. And I'm really looking forward to seeing that fight in December, hopefully, or worst case, early next year. The final thing to talk about, the Oscar De La Hoya, Ryan Garcia feud. A lot of working parts going on with that one at the moment. Apparently, they're scheduled for mediation. There's been a lot of things going back and forth between the two camps, a lot of legal threats. Well, October 18th, the two parties will be getting together for mediation to try and sort this out. Ryan Garcia is trying to break his contract with Golden Boy. He says Golden Boy is in breach of their contract. He is expected to return. This is a strange thing about it. He's expected to return a month later on November the 18th. So at the same time, these two are going back and forth with legal threats and mediation plans and fight announcements. They're trying to plan a fight opponent and a date and a location and everything and other purses and all that on top of that. So a really bizarre case. Just a quick breakdown for you. Ryan Garcia is trying to use the Canelo Alvarez path that he used to get out of his promotional contract with Golden Boy Promotions by saying that there's an what would you call it, a conflict. That's what I'm trying to spit out there. A conflict in the contract in that Oscar De La Hoya has an exclusive deal with DAZN, whereas De La Hoya's arrangement with Ryan Garcia says he's free to fight on any network. So there's a little bit of a loophole there that Ryan Garcia could jump through. That's the same loophole that Canelo Alvarez used, because at the time it was between De La Hoya and Alvarez, pretty much saying that they had the freedom to fight on any network and against any opponent that Canelo chooses, whereas De La Hoya's contract with DAZN was clearly stipulated that there had to be a Triple G trilogy a couple of years before it actually took place. So that allowed Canelo Alvarez to get out of it. So I won't bore you with all the details. I hope I've sort of shed a little bit of light on it. But as I said, those two go into mediation on October 18th, at the same time planning a November 18 return for Ryan Garcia at 140. So that's about it for this week's episode, guys. Hope you have a really good weekend watching the fights. Plenty going on. And we'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in.